Hi, my name is Adam Hamilton, and I'm excited that you're joining me on this journey in the footsteps of Moses as we traverse the land where Moses walked. We see the things that Moses saw, and we join him in taking the children of Israel out of bondage in Egypt and to the Promised Land. It's going to be an exciting adventure. So, let's begin. I'm so excited about this journey with you to Egypt. And I just want to remind you, these videos are meant to accompany the book. And the book will tell you more about the story of Moses, give you the historical background, and help us understand what does Moses' life mean for us today. In these videos, my primary purpose is simply to take you to Egypt and to allow you to see the things that Moses would have seen, to walk in his footsteps, and perhaps for those experiences to help us understand Moses' story more completely. We'll begin our journey visiting the two most iconic and most visited sites in all of Egypt, the pyramids at Giza and the great temples at Luxor, what was in Moses' time the Egyptian capital city of Thebes. Now, Giza is a major Egyptian city approximately 12 miles south of central Cairo. It's really part of the southern edge of Cairo. On its western edge, bordered by the city on one side and the desert on the others, are the pyramids of Giza and the Great Sphinx. These pyramids and the Sphinx were built around 2500 BC, more than 1,000 years before the time of Moses. They were located near the ancient capital of Memphis and were built as the burial chambers for and monuments to the pharaohs Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Khufu's pyramid is the largest and first built, usually referred to as the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's the only remaining of the structures named by Antipater of Sidon in the 2nd century BC as one of the 7 wonders of the world. For 3,800 years, it was the tallest man-made structure on Earth. It's estimated that the Great Pyramid took as long as 20 years to complete. It was originally 481 feet tall and is built from over 2 million blocks of stone, carved across the Nile River and brought over 5 miles to the location of the pyramids. Some wrongly believe the Israelites built the pyramids, but these pyramids were here long before there were Israelites. Abraham likely saw these pyramids when he sojourned in Egypt. So the pharaohs built the pyramids as their burial chambers. And to stand here and to actually have a chance to touch these stones, and you realize 4,600 years ago, the slaves who were cutting these rocks out of the mountain across the other side of the Nile, bringing them here and installing them in this location. And when Abraham arrived in Egypt, as Genesis describes, this pyramid would have been here. It was standing 600, maybe 800 years before Abraham ever arrived on the scene. When Joseph arrives in Egypt, he sees the same pyramid we're seeing today. And Moses, of course, grew up in the shadow of the pyramids. He would have seen them many, many times across the course of his life. So in the 3rd century before Christ, when the Greeks came and they began exploring Egypt and Egyptian culture and all of the things that were here, they found the pyramids, but they were buried mostly in sand. There was just a little tiny portion of the pyramids on the top. And you can imagine what it was like as they were uncovering all of these amazing finds. So as we stand here before the pyramids, we have the Sphinx. Has the body of a lion and the face of a man, and the face of this particular Sphinx is Khafre, the man whose pyramid is right behind it, and he is the protector of this necropolis where the kings are buried here. So this is the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids of Giza. Now, what do these pyramids have to do with Moses? The story of Moses is the story of an epic battle between Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and an 80-year-old stuttering sheepherder who demanded the release of the Israelite slaves. The pyramids begin to help us see just how formidable Moses' opponent was. They point to the fact that the pharaohs were considered chosen by the gods and typically semi-divine. Their ability to commission such massive monuments built for their own glory and death, monuments not seen on this scale anywhere else in the world, tells us just how powerful they were. Now, I'd like to take you from the pyramids at Giza to what was the capital city when Moses was born, the ancient city of Thebes, but what is today known as Luxor. Now, by the time of Moses, pharaohs were no longer building pyramids. They were building massive temples. Egypt's largest and most famous is the Karnak Temple, one of the largest temple complexes in the world. It was begun 500 or 600 years before Moses was born, and each pharaoh added to this colossal structure. While ostensibly built to honor the gods, these buildings seem focused on honoring the pharaohs and declaring their greatness. The exterior walls of the temples feature glorious and often exaggerated battle scenes with the pharaohs defeating their enemies. Throughout the temples are giant columns and walls covered in bas-reliefs of the pharaohs making offerings to the gods. Statues of the pharaohs like these further point to the glory of the kings of Egypt. Located nearby is the Valley of the Kings. And it's fascinating to travel through the Valley of the Kings. We weren't allowed to take cameras into this place, but as you go into the Valley of the Kings, you have a chance to see the burial places that were prepared for the pharaohs from the time they first became king. They would commission their burial chambers, and it might take 20 or 30 years to complete these chambers. And all of the pharaohs that would have been a part of the Exodus story were buried in this location, in the Valley of the Kings. The other magnificent building in Luxor, in the city of Luxor itself, is the Luxor Temple. And best visited by night, it's magnificent. And as you walk through this building, it becomes crystal clear that the central focus here is on the pharaohs. It's thought that this temple was dedicated to the cult of the pharaohs. And it may have been here that most of the pharaohs were coronated, where they were imbued with divinity. And that's how it was understood, that the pharaoh at their coronation was imbued with divinity and became a semi-divine being, a sort of incarnate God, so both human and yet also in some sense divine. And in this role, as a semi-divine being, the pharaoh was an intermediary between the gods and humanity. The divine status of the kings was celebrated year after year after year. Depending on when Moses was born, it's likely that Moses was born in the city of Thebes and that he grew up in this area, so that all of the things you've just seen are things that Moses would have grown up seeing, or at least many of them, the ones that were completed in his time. And so this was Moses' proverbial stomping grounds. Thebes would also have been the place where Moses studied, where he learned as a part of Pharaoh's household. He would have been taught in the areas of Egyptian philosophy, theology, science, economics, law, religion. All of these things Moses would have been trained in the city of Thebes. And while he no doubt traveled all across the rest of the country, this was undoubtedly home for him. And here, Acts 7:22 tells us that Moses learned everything Egyptian wisdom had to offer. I'd like to end by taking you to the Nile River at Luxor. Now, there's no overstating the importance of the role of the Nile in life for the Egyptian people. It was life. The scripture tells us that Pharaoh had become nervous over the growth of the Hebrew population in Egypt, for reasons I mentioned in the book. Consequently, he commanded that the boys born to the Hebrew women be put to death, that the boy children be thrown into the Nile River and killed. Moses' mother had managed to hide her son until he was 3 months old, and then she had a plan. Knowing the location of where Pharaoh's daughters bathed along the Nile, she placed her son in a basket at just the right time in the hope that Pharaoh's daughter would see her child, have compassion, and take him home. The Israelite slaves, many of them, most of them lived in the land of Goshen, but undoubtedly throughout the land of Egypt there were Israelite slaves. And it was here that the royal family lived, so this scene likely unfolds right here in Luxor. Taking a boat ride upon the Nile today is a magnificent experience. We took a small boat out at just before sunset, and as we were cruising down the Nile, just so peaceful, beautiful, and the scenes that you see all around you, I imagine this is very much what life looked like 3 millennia ago when Moses was living. You find the farmers scattering their seed, the fishermen fishing, the reeds growing on the banks of the Nile, and somewhere along this beautiful river, I imagine a young woman taking her little boy, placing him in a papyrus basket, setting him among the reeds where Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe, hoping, weeping, praying that she might have compassion on her son and take him up, draw him out of that basket and out of the river, take him to be her own son and give him a future. Little did she know that day as she stood near the reeds watching, that her son would grow up to become the great deliverer whom God would use to set his people free from slavery and take them to the promised land.